Hi everyone, welcome back to my Kimono upcycling channel. It's currently May here, those in between days where it's warm one day and chilly the next. But summer is definitely around the corner. So today, I'm going to make a flowy, summer-ready flare skirt, and I'll make it size adjustable for extra comfort and flexibility. Let me show you the kimono I'll be using today. It's a tsukesage, a type of semi-formal kimono. The name tsukesage literally means hanging down or placed lower, referring to the placement of the decorated patterns on the fabric. The pattern flows upwards from the hem and appears on the sleeves and front panels. But unlike more formal kimonos, the designs don't cross over the seams. Instead, each panel is dyed separately before the kimono is sewn together. You often find elegant motifs on tsukesage, like the lilies on this one. In Japanese symbolism, lilies represent purity and femininity, which adds a lovely touch of meaning. In Japanese culture, flowers often carry deep spiritual significance. The lily, in particular, is linked to the ancient Kojiki, Japan's oldest surviving chronicle, compiled in the early 8th century. The Kojiki contains myths about the creation of Japan and the kami, gods or spirits, that govern nature and human affairs. Lilies are traditionally associated with purity and divine beauty, embodying the refined qualities expected of noble women and goddesses in these stories. For example, there's an episode describes how Emperor Jimmu encountered Isuke Yorihime at the spring of Sai and welcomed her as his empress. The Sai River, Saigawa, is known as a place where lilies bloom. Emperor Jimmu is regarded as the first emperor of Japan, and according to the Kojiki, he is a descendant of the gods who descended from Takamagahara, the high plane of heaven, through the lineage of the sun goddess Amaterasu. This connection adds an extra layer of cultural depth to the fabric design, making it not only beautiful but also meaningful. Tsukesage strikes a balance between casual and formal. It's more refined than everyday kimonos but less formal than styles like homongi and tomesode. Homongi are more formal, with patterns that flow continuously across the seams and shoulders, often worn by married and unmarried women for visits and parties. Meanwhile, tomesode are most formal, typically worn by married women at weddings, and are distinguished by their black background and elaborate designs below the waist. Because the patterns on tsukesage are more isolated and don't cross seams, tsukesage fabric is ideal for upcycling. It allows us to repurpose the fabric into new items without interrupting the flows of the design, making it perfect for skirts, bags, and accessories. Now, let's start by taking it apart. There are many ways to do this, but I like to begin at the color. I found it's easier to keep the pieces intact that way. If you're thinking, wait, are you really cutting up that beautiful kimono? Thank you. Thank you for caring about the value of kimono. Honestly, not many people in Japan do anymore. Many kimonos are simply thrown away these days. They're expensive too. When I moved to the UK for grad school in 2022, taking a break from my job in Tokyo's tech industry, I wanted to wear a kimono at my graduation. But I couldn't afford it. Rental prices are so high, mostly because people don't wear them regularly anymore. That's when I first learned about the scale of kimono waste. I thought, maybe someone outside Japan would appreciate them more. What if we could turn these beautiful garments into everyday wear, skirts, dresses, accessories that people can actually use? That's how I started this upcycling business last year, buying kimonos on eBay and giving them a new life. Now, this will actually be my first time making a flare skirt from kimono fabric. Up until now, I've made haori jackets from the upper parts, wrap skirts from the lower panels, and scrunchies or scarves from the sleeves. My wrap skirts use the original lining too, so they're super simple to make. I've made several, but only sold one so far. That customer loved it, though, even sent me photos wearing it in winter. The layered design probably helped keep her warm. But then I started getting comments. Can you make a flare skirt instead? In my last video, I talked about how I had too many product range in my shop and needed to simplify. But then I thought, would you really want to wear a heavy layered wrap skirt to the beach this summer? Maybe I've been choosing to make what's easy for me, not what people actually want. And that realization hit hard. One day, I was chatting with a Japanese woman who owns a wellness shop near Bond Street in central London. She's run her business for over 10 years and is still constantly learning. Recently, even went to France to train under a massage expert. It inspired me. If someone so successful is still growing, what excuse do I have? So yes, I've decided to make a flare skirt. Even if it's more complex, even if I can only make a few, I want to challenge myself, and I believe many of my returning customers are ready for something new this summer. Before starting, I watched 20 to 30 tutorials on YouTube. The structure is simple, but surprisingly, flare skirts need a lot of fabric. While kimonos look like they offer plenty, they're actually made of long rectangular panels, not ideal for circular cutting. I found other creators using kimono fabric, but they added pleats at the waist, not quite the look I wanted. Most kimono upcyclers avoid curved cuts to minimize fabric waste. But if it doesn't look beautiful in the end, is it really worth saving fabric? Still, I couldn't find anyone doing exactly what I envisioned. So I decided I'll just have to do it myself. When pressing kimono fabric, I treat it almost like handling something sacred. These textiles often carry decades, sometimes even a century, of history woven into them, so every crease or fold must be approached with care. I always begin by preparing a pressing cloth, just a thin layer of cotton or muslin. This acts as a protective barrier between the silk and the iron. You should never allow the iron to touch the silk directly, especially when working with vintage kimono. The fibers are incredibly delicate, and many of these fabrics have been dyed or treated in ways that don't respond well to heat. By the way, I learned this the hard way. Once I was working with a stunning kimono that featured delicate hand-painted details, soft, almost watercolor, like flowers. I didn't realize the paint had been applied on the surface rather than dyed into the fibers. I pressed the iron down without thinking, and the paint melted almost instantly. It stuck to the iron plate and smudged across the fabric. I just stood there, horrified. That one moment of haste cost me the most beautiful part of the kimono. There was no saving it. Since then, I've become extremely cautious. I always test a small hidden section of the fabric first, usually inside a sleeve or on the lining if it's still intact. And if the kimono has any embellishments like metallic thread, stenciling, or hand-painted accents, I'm careful to avoid those areas or press them from the reverse side, always through the pressing cloth. It's a slow, almost meditative process, but it's one of the reasons I find working with kimonos so meaningful. When it comes to seams, especially those that have been in place for decades, I open them up and press them flat from the inside first. Although kimono can have surprisingly stubborn folds, particularly if they've been stored tightly folded or rolled in tansu chests. In these cases, I'll use a little steam, but only lightly. I either hover the iron just above the pressing cloth or use a slightly damp pressing cloth to apply gentle moisture. Too much, and the silk can go limp or become water stained. Pressing kimono fabric seems almost like bringing something back to life. You take a piece that's been resting, often forgotten in someone's attic or storage box, and slowly coax it back into a state where it can shine again. It's a moment to slow down and truly honor the craftsmanship in each piece. And once it's pressed, neatly, carefully, you're left with something that's smooth, light, and ready to be transformed into something entirely new. Unpicking the kimono took me about 3 hours, since I was filming too. I discarded the yellowed polyester lining, but saved the orange-stained silk panels. They were still lovely. Here's how much usable fabric I ended up with. Then I planned how to piece them together into one large panel. Some sections had pre-cut areas, like from the color, so I had to work around that. By the way, this was filmed the same week I uploaded my Nippori and weekly vlog videos. And that was the week my channel blew up. I went from around 500 subscribers to over 2,000 in one weekend. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, liking, and commenting. I've been on YouTube for over 6 months, but this was the first real growth spurt. From my 46-minute Nippori video, I spent 9 hours writing the script, 2 hours recording voiceover, and 13 hours editing. If the music is too much, feel free to mute and enjoy the subtitle. Unfortunately, my editing software crashed while working on the shorts, and I lost all that data. So I won't be able to upload the video without the music. My laptop is 4 years old and wasn't meant for heavy video editing, and my iPhone 11 is becoming a vintage device. If you have any recommendations for editing laptops or filming gear, I'd love to hear them. Anyway, back to the skirt. I finished assembling the fabric panel, but the next morning I realized I got the measurements wrong, so I had to unpick and re-sew it. One thing you might not expect when working with vintage kimono is the smell. Before I even unpick a single stitch, I always take a moment to notice it. It's difficult to describe, but the scent of a second-hand kimono, especially one that's been stored for years, is instantly recognizable. There's a soft, dusty sweetness to it. Sometimes there's a trace of old wooden drawers or chests, the kind that have absorbed decades of life. Other times, you catch hints of incense, tatami mats, or that faint early silk smell, especially if it's been stored in a humid environment. And it's not unpleasant, at least not to me. It smells like history, like a fragment of someone's life, wrapped in cloth. I often find myself imagining who wore it. Was it someone's mother, grandmother, or perhaps a young woman celebrating her coming of age? That scent connects me to them, even if I never know their name. Some kimono arrive in pristine condition, but others clearly haven't been aired for years. I've opened parcels and been hit by the pungent smell of mothballs, the sort traditionally used in Japanese homes. Once I received a package so strongly scented, I had to leave it outside for a day before I could even go through it. But still, I couldn't be upset. It was like opening a time capsule. When I work with these fabrics, I sometimes pause, not just to iron or measure, but to breathe in. It's a reminder that this fabric isn't just material, it holds memory. The scent tells me it was loved, cherished, worn for something special, and then, for whatever reason, put away. So yes, when people ask what it's like to work with vintage kimono, I always say, it's not just about the colors or patterns, it's also about texture, sound, and scent. And for me, that fragrance is something I've come to treasure. I double checked all the required measurements and finally created 95 cm by 100 cm panel. When upcycling kimono fabric, a sticky roll becomes an essential tool, not just before you start, but throughout the entire process. Vintage kimono often release fine dust, fibers, and tiny thread bits, especially as you cut and handle the fabric. Using a sticky roll regularly while you're cutting, pinning, and even sewing helps keep your workspace clean and prevents debris from getting into your seams or sewing machine. It also makes a huge difference in keeping the fabric pieces crisp and manageable, especially with delicate weaves like silk. This small step helps you maintain precision, protect your tools, and honor the quality of the original textile as you give it new life. I folded in half, marked the curve, pinned it carefully, and got ready to cut. But first, tea time. Taking breaks is so important when sewing. When I was younger, I did a farm stay in Yorkshire, and I was amazed how often people took tea breaks. Breakfast at 7, then tea at 9:30. Lunch at 12, tea again at 2:30. Dinner at 6, and tea again. Coming from Japan, I was like, do you ever work? By the way, this little apron here, I made it for my son about a couple weeks ago from a cotton yukata fabric I bought in Japan. It's elastic at the neck and back so he can wear it by himself. And he loves it. He wears it to everywhere and every time. I'm so lucky. Caregiving is a kind of heaven. Those quiet, meaningful moments in the middle of looking after the people you love most. Whether you're supporting a child, helping an aging parent, or simply being there for someone who needs you, it's an act of love that feels deeply rewarding. But it's also a roller coaster. One moment you feel proud for showing up or doing your best, and the next you're overwhelmed with guilt, exhaustion, or doubt. You wonder, am I doing enough? Is this the right thing to do? Caregiving isn't just about tasks or responsibilities. It's emotional labor, holding space for others while trying not to lose yourself. You find joy in their smiles, connection in shared moments, but also carry the weight of responsibility and constant second guessing. Feel every effort, however small or imperfect, is an expression of care. It's love in action. Whether you're caring for a child, a parent, or anyone who depends on you, know this. The worry, the love, the mess, the grace, that is caregiving. That is motherhood. Well, I could talk about this for hours and the video would get way too long, so I shall get back to work. Now hemming the curve. Holding and sewing a 3-hole hem along a curve is tricky. When I mess it up, I unpicked and tried again. I found out it's easier to use clips first and fold bit by bit instead of starting from one end. I've never been to fashion school, never worked in a factory, and I don't have experience in the apparel industry. But I've always loved sewing, making gifts for family, keychains for my club in school. Seeing so many kimonos go to waste and knowing it harms the environment breaks my heart. I believe that through upcycling, I can make something meaningful, something special, something that might make someone feel unique and help preserve beauty for the next generation. So then I turned the large piece of fabric into a skirt, but I've made sure not to waste the leftovers either. For this project, I've actually created 2 more new items. One is a knot bag and the other is a furoshiki, a traditional Japanese wrapping cloth. Both the knot bag and the furoshiki were made by piecing together offcuts. For the knot bag, I used some cotton chili men fabric that I'd originally bought to make a yukata. I thought it might go well together, and it really did. When working on projects, I usually try not to change the thread color. Not because I don't care, but because honestly, it takes time and it can really slow down my workflow. It's one of those little things that chips away at productivity. But for this particular project, this knot bag, I made an exception. Just for the German fabric part, I switched to a navy thread. And you know what? That small change made a big difference. It gave the piece a more polished, intentional look. It's subtle, but it really upgrades the final outcome. Sometimes, taking that extra step, even if it feels inconvenient in the moment, ends up being totally worth it. For the back of this furoshiki, I used an inner panel I saved when I untied the kimono. If you look closely, you can still see the faint lines that were marked when the garment was originally made. Precise, careful work done by someone long ago. There are also small stitching marks left from where I removed the original thread. I could have hidden them, cut them away, or patched over those traces, but I chose to keep them. Because the history of furoshiki is actually rooted in upcycling and giving fabric new purpose and carrying stories forward through use and reuse. My work isn't just a creation. It's a continuation, a quiet collaboration across time. What was once a kimono now becomes a furoshiki, and every visible mark is a reminder that this piece carries more than just function. It carries history. By the way, did you know that furoshiki literally means bath spread? Today, it's known as a square cloth used for wrapping and carrying things, but its history goes way back. The term furoshiki became common in the 18th century during Japan's Edo period, 1603 to 1868, when public bathhouses were spreading rapidly. People would wrap their clothes and bath items in a cloth, then use that same cloth to stand on while changing. That's how the bath spread, or furoshiki, got its name. But wrapping clothes themselves existed long before that. In the Nara period, 710 to 794, they were called tsumi. In the Heian period, 794 to 1185, they became known as kuromo tsumi. And by the Nanbokucho to early Edo period, 1336 to 1600, they were referred to as hira tsumi. The oldest known example is from the Shosoin treasure house, where precious items were wrapped in clothes sized to fit each object and labeled with ink. During the Muromachi period, 1336 to 1573, when Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimitsu built a grand bathhouse, nobles wrapped their garments in clothes, bearing family crests to avoid mix-ups, and changed clothes on them after bathing. This is considered one of the earliest uses of furoshiki as both wrapper and mat. By the Edo period, as commerce and daily life evolved, furoshiki became widely used for wrapping goods. In fire-prone Edo, people even slept with large furoshiki under their bedding so they could quickly bundle belongings during emergencies. These were called haya furoshiki. Then in the Meiji era, 1868 to 1912, furoshiki became a common part of everyday life, used to carry school books, wrap gifts, and transport goods. Though they declined with the rise of plastic and paper bags in the modern era, furoshiki are now making a comeback as eco-friendly, reusable, and beautiful tools, deeply rooted in Japanese culture and history. Last year at the Christmas market, a few people asked me if I had anything to wrap gifts in. That's when I started thinking about making furoshiki. Depending on how you tie it, it can become a bag, a book cover, or even a wine bottle wrap. I also made a couple of scrunchies and headbands. Those are my classics. And I made 2 scarves as well, one using the original lily patterned outer fabric and another lined with a soft inner fabric. And even after all that, I still have a bit of fabric left. What would you make with it? Let me know. Oh, and I've also finished the wrap skirt. The skirt part itself is 100 cm wide, and the ties are over 370 cm long, so it'll fit a variety of body shapes and sizes. I wonder how much I should sell it for. If you're curious, check out my website. In my next video, I'll be showing you around Osaka. We'll visit an art cafe, do a bit of radio-controlled car shopping, check out a local festival, try a top-rated tonkatsu lunch, and of course, a massive kimono haul. See you then. またね。